holum vav on the end there is talking about his or him. And if you look a little further, again, you see the word lo, which means not, and then there's another hyphen, yikala. Well, as you begin to look at it, you'll see that the Aleph and Tav covenant one is connected to that word kibero, and the word kiber, Strong's number 6913, means to bury. It has a cousin, and that cousin word is 6895, kabah, which means to curse. Are you with me? And 6896, keba, which infers the belly. And to curse the belly, as in the cursing of the adulterous bride, also known as Eve, stroke Sarah, stroke the bride. Did you hear what I just said? The word lo here means not, while yikala is the phrase translated as we will not withhold or not withhold. However, I want you to notice that word 3607, kala. That word is very closely related to a word that could be translated as bride, kala. So you could read this phrase this way. It is the Aleph and Tav, his burial, not my bride. Did you hear what I just said? It is the Aleph and Tav, his burial, not my bride. Even though Sarah has died, we understand that death held her bound because of the penalty of the adulterous bride that had been passed down to us because of Adam and Eve's sin in the garden. Am I right? Well, Yeshua then, in the person of Isaac, dies for her. And so it becomes his death and burial and resurrection rather than Sarah's. Can you see that? Oh, man, this is powerful. Now, again, what's happening here is that it's the Messiah who is paying the penalty of death. And in this case, Isaac pays the penalty of death that his mother had incurred simply because she issued forth from the loins of Adam. Well, what happens is that it immediately paves the way for the resurrection of Sarah. Sarah's dead, right? Well, if the Aleph and Tav has died for her, she is automatically a candidate for resurrection. Isn't that what the great hope is supposed to be? The resurrection? And isn't that what he says? I am the resurrection and the life. Well, we didn't initially see her body raised up out of the ground, but nonetheless, she became a candidate for resurrection right there. Isn't that powerful? Turn to your neighbor and tell them, I had never seen that before. Now, if you look at that, again, this Torah portion is divided between Sarah and Rebekah. It actually forms a mirror. If you take a mirror and stand in front of it, you have the same images, but they're juxtaposed. They're in front of one another, you see. And so you have Sarah and Rebekah who are mirroring one another. Do you hear what I just said? Rebekah, second Eve, bride, church, Sarah, first Eve. Are you following me? Now, if you remember when Yeshua was talking to his disciples, specifically Philip, he says, Philip, have I been with you such a long time you don't recognize who I am? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Am I telling you the truth? Well, here you could say, if you have seen Yeshua, you saw Isaac. If you saw Isaac, you've seen Yeshua, the Messiah. Right? But if you've seen Isaac, you have also seen Yahweh and Adam, because the sages teach that Isaac was the spitting image of his father Abraham. Did you hear what I just said? Now, so if you've seen Isaac, you've seen Abraham, because he was a mirror of his daddy. Are you following me? But Isaac was also a shadow picture of Messiah. So if you saw Isaac, you saw Messiah. If you see Messiah, you've seen the Father. Am I correct? Well, then that same law should apply to the ladies in this particular Torah portion. If you've seen Sarah, you've seen Eve. Am I right? If you've seen Rebekah, you've seen the church. Are y'all getting into this? Man. Now, if you continue looking at chapter 23, verse 4, it says, I'm a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. Now, that phrase, that I may bury my dead. If you'll notice throughout this Torah portion, we talked about it, Kenneth Paul and I last night, and just blew my socks off. Just blew me away. The word kibbur for bury is seen a number of times in this Torah portion. If you will look at the word kibbur and you will take and move the resh from the end to the front, it spells the word Rivka. Y'all missed that. Rivka is Rebecca. Let me go back and say that again. If you move the resh from the end, kibbur, kuf, beit, resh, ha, kibbur, the burying place. If you move the resh to the front, it becomes Rivka or Rebecca. So what you do is you move the resh, the head, the first, or the chief one. In this instance, it's Sarah. If you get Sarah out of the way, you remove her out of your sight. Isn't that what Abraham said? What do you have? You have Rivka, Rebecca. Strong's number 7259. Oh. Genesis 24, verse 67. You see, Isaac introduced to Rebekah, and the first thing he does, we talked about it last night, he takes her into his mother's tent. When you read that, you think, my goodness, this boy had some problems. Hello? Are you hearing me? But if you look at it in the Hebrew language, it's continuing along the lines that you and I are talking about. The word tent there is tabernacle. And of course, your body is known as a tabernacle. Literally, he could have taken her back to the tent of Eve because Sarah represented Eve. The bride, Rebecca, is going to be taken back to the tabernacle of Eve. This body is also known as a tabernacle. Literally, Rebecca was put back into the body of Sarah. Now that sounds strange, doesn't it? But for all intents and purposes, she literally became Sarah. She became the Eve. Eve was the mother of all living, and so was Sarah, because what did she do? She mothered Isaac, who was a shadow picture of Messiah, and Messiah is the living one. Can you see the picture? Now, I am not talking about any out-of-body experience. I'm not talking about any kind of transhuman DNA or gender-altering thing. I'm talking about looking at it from a purely spiritual perspective. Can y'all see this? Yes. Rebecca is literally taken into the tent of Sarah, and Sarah, who had died and had the opportunity to be resurrected because the price is paid, Sarah gets a new body. Sarah was 127 years old, and all of a sudden, here comes this fine woman, Rebecca, and that's whose body Sarah gets. Do you see what I'm talking about? She gets a new body. She's taken into the tent of the tabernacle of Sarah and Eve and returned to Eden. Do y'all see that? 2 Corinthians chapter 5 talks about we have an earthly tabernacle, this body. And what are we looking for? We're longing for the day that we'll put this tabernacle off and take up a glorified body. You are part of the bride. What do you want to do? You're going to be put back into the body of Eve. Hello. You will become the Eve. Are y'all seeing what I'm talking about? Are y'all getting this? Smile and nod. If you don't, just get this. Let's move on a little quicker. It's actually a picture of the resurrection. You are part of the old Eve because of the sin nature that was handed down to you. You're going to pass by the way that all flesh does. You're going to lay down and die. However, there is going to come one, Rivka, her name means one who was joined to another by a power higher than hers. And that was something Yahweh did. So what's going to happen is that your body is going to be transformed. You will not be tormented by the ravages of age. You will have a new glorified body, which that was the shadow picture that's painted in the translation from Sarah to Rebecca. I'm not talking about a literal physical translation where the dead body of Sarah was inhabited. I'm not talking about the invasion of body snatchers here or anything like that. I'm trying to make this as plain as I can. I'm talking about the shadow picture of the resurrection taking place here. Are you with me? Now, I have a controversial statement warning for you that I posted. that shadow picture gets even more intriguing since Abraham is a type of Yahweh also, as he was a type of Adam, right? Abraham takes two wives, Sarah and Hagar. This is a picture of a covenant wife, Sarah, and the wife of the flesh, Hagar. Isn't that true? Hagar, Strong's number 1904, is not defined in the Strong's, so you have to do some digging. See there? I told you, you're not going to get this with just casually walking around tiptoeing on it. You're going to have to dig for this one. If you look at her name, it's a cousin to the word 1898, Hagar, which means to remove something, to take it away, to separate it, as in removing, that's supposed to be dross, or impurities from silver. It refers to Yahweh rather, driving away the rebellious. Isn't that what Abraham did to Hagar? He drove her away. If you look in the Abarim publication, it says that her name means to take flight, a sojourner, the dragged away one. She was from Egypt, which is a typifying sin. She pictures a future Israel. Sarah was a covenant bride called Judah. Sarah was not driven away. Hagar was driven away. Hagar represents the northern tribes, also known as the tribes that got off into the flesh, Israel, that became sojourners in the earth and were driven away. The 10 northern tribes that were separated from the bridal company while Judah remains in covenant. And you see that. Now, you have to ask yourself, I'm not really sure if I believe that or not. Well, if you go back and look at the statement Yeshua makes, he says, I have not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Well, can I ask you a question? Who follows, what matriarchal woman follows Rebekah? Rachel. Rachel's name is, in Hebrew, is translated as ewe, sheep. She's a female sheep. Oh, I haven't come but for the lost sheep. So the natural thing is for Rachel, the lost sheep, to follow Rebekah, who follows Sarah. Can you see that? Now, if you continue to look at it in Genesis 29:6, Rachel comes with the sheep, and it says that the word sheep there, Rachel is you, and then you have the word sheep. The word for sheep is Strong's number 6629, and that is zone, which means a sheep or a migration. Guess what? The lost sheep are migrating. Are you hearing me? The shepherd is prodding the sheep. The house of Rachel is the children of Joseph and Benjamin. Are you hearing me? Zon, 6629, is a cousin to 6726. Zion, the city of David. Well, do you remember back in 2 Samuel chapter 6, after the great sin and error, when the ark was handled deceitfully, and the ark was moved to a place where it would only be handled by the servants of Adam. Remember that? When they began to prosper, David, who is a picture of Messiah, takes that ark and moves it to the city of David, called Jerusalem. Can you see the shadow picture here? Rachel, is going to take the sheep into the city of David, the lost sheep. That word Zion there also is a place of grafting, which would be considered the pierce place. Now, this same shadow pictures continued. Remember, Abraham had 2 wives. Well, guess what? David had several wives. The principal one was Bathsheba, the house of the covenant, just like Sarah. However, there was another wife that his son Absalom takes and has his way with her. Did you know that Absalom, father of peace, is a type or shadow picture of the Antichrist, and his brother was Shalom, peace. He was the counterfeit one right there in the house. Can y'all see the picture here? If you want the rest of this story, you'll have to get into track 3 of this teaching. Thank you for listening. Shalom Aleichem. Thank you for returning with us. We're at track 3 of this teaching called Toldot, or Generations, Manna from Heaven Ministries. My name is David Matthews, and we were looking at the fact that there is shortly in front of us going to be an encounter with the false one. And we were looking at how Abraham and Isaac were shadow pictures of the first Adam and the second Adam. How Abraham also was a shadow picture of Yahweh in that he had two wives, one who was a covenant wife, a covenant